I'm passionate about people's development, and I'm passionate around culture and heritage.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
I think it's important. Culture is so important, whether it's in organization or whether it's your own personal culture. I think it's important because that's where your values come from.
All right, that's great. So, were you born in the UK? Because right now you are in London, right?
Mm.
Were you born in UK? Tell me a little bit about your tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, I was born in Jamaica, and I live with my grandmother in a very close-knit community where for me, I really get to understand the importance of culture. I didn't at the time, but I now value the connection, the community, and how culture plays a major role in enabling people to have a sense of belonging. And transition from Jamaica to the UK, I definitely recognize the difference in education, in culture, and how people navigate themselves around the system. So in Jamaica, it's very much an entrepreneurial culture. In the UK, it's not as apparent in terms of people are being very entrepreneurial. People do entrepreneurial activities, but in Jamaica, it's really prominent that everywhere you look, people are really looking at ways to thrive and to create a business and being very enterprising in their attitude.
That's interesting. And you are going to be talking about businesses today, how to start a business, and also your entrepreneurial journey. But before we move there, this is a program that is dedicated to African diaspora. And for that, we pay a lot of attention to our history, where we are coming from, who we are, so that we can also help some other persons to learn. Because we are not alone here. We have other people that are that look like us, that are somewhere who need this connection. Our purpose here is to connect with one another, and of course, we do that by talking about ourselves, our origin, when we were much smaller, what is our culture, anything that can help us to connect. So for that, I'm going to try to sort of learn from you now. So you were growing up in Jamaica. Tell me what you see around you. Take us back to your childhood.
Okay, in Jamaica, what you actually see is that people are very enterprising, very aspirational, because you heard that the only thing that's going to take you out of your situation is education. So people value education, and also you see the remnants of the history. You see big houses, you see plantation houses, you see plantation fields where you see the remnants of the history of the colonial past everywhere you go. So there are some places that as a Black person you couldn't envisage yourself actually going into because of the way the structure is situated. So the aspiration is that the only thing that's going to take you out of that situation and to help you to navigate is to educate yourself. So it's been very, very aspirational. So you see that around you. When I arrive in the UK, it's completely different in terms of how people look at education. Because, there is a system here that you can thrive without having to be entrepreneurial. Academically, you can apply for a job and not having a degree and, work your way through. I mean, it's changing now. I'm talking about when I first arrived here. Once you're aspirational and you really want to proceed and progress, and with hard work and push yourself through and surround yourself with the right people, you can make something of yourself. But I think like in Jamaica, it's education. You really have to push yourself, and it's harder to get yourself around the system. And also, I think academic approach is more prevalent in terms of people aspiring to get certain jobs, like even if you're going to be a cashier in a supermarket, you need to have certain qualifications, whereas here it isn't so.
All right. So you need education in order for you to survive in the Jamaica system. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
So say maybe somebody want to be a farmer, he want to cultivate the land, he want to be able to live in a traditional sense. How much education is going to be needed there? Yeah, tell me more about that.
I think if you look in historical past, like when my grandparents, they wouldn't necessarily be needing any kind of academic qualification. I think for them, they would just be passionate and they just do what comes naturally to them. But I think these days, if you're going to be a farmer, there's so much things you have to take into consideration. Things have changed. You've got climate change, organic way of farming and everything else. So there's so many other things. It's not just about, oh, well, I'm just going to get the land and cultivate it. I think you need to be really educated around what is it you're planting and understanding how the earth work, the groundwork and what you're actually planting and how you're putting it in. So it's not as straightforward as it was in the past. I think you have to be a lot more educated these days to be a farmer.
And you were saying something that I found very important in the course of I think that was the question before this, referring to Jamaica, why you were sitting there, that there are some places that you could enter as a black person. I think, I don't know if I get that right. Could you please expatiate a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we live in a class society, whether we like it, yes or no, that's the reality. And, money talks. And so it's about who has the money, who has the biggest house, who actually own the means of production. And so if you're not from a particular class, and I think that applies to every society, class plays a major role. Race as well, but I think class is so different in the sense of you have to know what class is to understand that, yes, this is where you belong. And having that sense of belonging, that there are certain places that you can go. At one time, it's changing as well, where, you have to be a particular color, to get a certain job in a bank or frontline staff. You have to be light skinned in order to. So, that marginalization plays a major role in terms of the class system.
So in Jamaica, you mean for having maybe a certain color, you are not allowed to access a certain role. So that sort of make me want to think now. So who own these places that you need to work in? Are they owned by Jamaica people or are they owned by other people who sort of now are depriving you of the opportunity to access some of this information in your own country?
So, for example, the house that I recently bought in Jamaica, I'm the first Black person to have owned it. And it's very secluded, it's very tranquil. It's in the middle of a community, but it's really cut off. And this is how, most of these houses, these plantation houses, it was all owned by the plantation owners and their children. And so it's been handed down throughout the generation. So as a Black person, you wouldn't necessarily be able to go into these places because that's not where you come from. That's not your background. And the only time you were allowed to go into these places if you were a worker or a servant going actually in there. So this is where the whole privilege comes into it. You're not privileged to actually go into these places because of your background and where you come from and the class system.
But this class, I'm trying to understand it a little bit. So it means this a class based on your appearance, on your skin color, or a class based on your academic qualification, based on your finance, your bank account. Is it because you are a Jamaican, because of your skin color? Is that what disqualifies you, or is it the money that you have? Or can you be more specific on that?
Okay, so if you look at our colonial past in terms of our history, most of the plantation owners came from whether it's Jamaica, the UK, or come from different parts. Anyway, they were all white colonizers, basically, plantation owners. And so all of these big plantations historically were owned by plantation owners. And so you got the whole plantation culture, which is owned by white people. And so when slavery ended and the whole history around it is that, those economics and plantation houses remain in the hands of the plantation owners. And so, you're not going to have privilege or access to it, because when you think of history, the plantation owners was given money by the Queen to actually maintain their farms, and the workers and from those plantations were just let loose with nothing, to actually go out and start anew. And that whole mentality is still today, that, as a Black person, you don't have the same opportunities given to you like your white counterparts.
Okay, and this is very important because we are talking of your generation now, and this is not something of 200 years ago. We are talking of something recent now because you're still here. Um, so, did you walk into some of these places? Are they still like the way they used to be? Is that time, or have everything changed now that you know of?
I think that whole way of looking and navigating, because people have left Jamaica and become economic migrants, that enables them to have money, and economics then play a major role in terms of, so long you have the money now in Jamaica, you've got the money, you can go anywhere you want and buy whatever you want, in a sense. And so economics, so it moved from one aspect of colorism or shadism to economics, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. What I was trying to say now is if that segregation is, it appeared to me that more like in South Africa or something that is that you can easily find in the United States. Now, this color caste, this color segregation thing, I'm trying to understand if it is still like that or it has. Anyway, help me understand that part.
Yeah, so when you really think of South Africa, right, it comes down to the same discrimination. Who rules? Who's the ruling class? And when we look in society these days, who's the ruling class? And understanding, yeah, we're navigating ourselves through the system, but there's still a level of a ceiling. Even in organizations, there's still a ceiling. And what for us as many Black people, we have not been conditioned or socialized or conditioned to understand how certain systems work. For example, if you look in the UK, you've got the royal family. To navigate that whole system, I mean, look what happened to Meghan and Harry recently in that sense. So it's the same system, which is classes in that sense. And so it's understanding, how do you navigate yourself around the system if you've never had the opportunity to? And the only way you're going to do that is through education.
All right, I'm moving out of there, but I think it's important. A
It
much
is
deeper
important.
understanding of
It
this.
is
Yeah.
important because, who you surround yourself with is very important. And the only way, as I said to many individuals, whatever you're going to do or you get up to in this world, you need a mentor, you need a coach, and you need a sponsor. Because, a mentor is somebody who you're going to emulate their behaviors and patterns of way of thinking, and that enables you to really navigate yourself through their behaviors and their habits and understanding how the system works. A coach is somebody who would guide you in understanding that some of the things and some of the habits that you have isn't workable. So you do need a coach to enable you to, that whole thing around engagement. We have to understand how engagement works. So, for example, if you're a child from what we would call a council estate here, I mean, I don't know what the equivalent to that would be in Italy, right? So you are limited in terms of the education that you get, unless you have a mentor or a coach or a sponsor to enable you to understand how the system works. Then, for example, you're a child who comes from these council estates, and you manage to work yourself through the system, and then you get yourself to a place like Oxford or Cambridge, for example. And how do you know the rules of engagement? Like, for example, a simple thing like, okay, you've never had the opportunity to have a 3-course dinner And you're sitting in this place with how many people who have been socializing. You're going to ask yourself, which knives, which forks, which utensils I use, how do I operate here? So sometimes, it depends on your background. You need somebody to show you how to navigate yourself around the system, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And the sense is also very relevant now if we are taking the UK case to explore now. Looking at Europe, for example, maybe in Italy, to explore it in the sense that we're trying to see how we can fit into the system. That it make a lot of sense there. But if we are looking at maybe where we are coming from now, say I am from Nigeria now, that in Nigeria, I understand that if you there is also a lot of classes there, but these classes are usually in determined by how much you have, how much money you have, and who you know in terms of the power play in the society. In Nigeria, it's not really about the question of color, no, but of course we still suffer a lot in terms of the European imposition with all their interwoven web of connection, control in the system. No, but all this will come in. They have a very complicated way of running African system that are not necessarily white dominated like South Africa, like that. So
It's who you know, isn't it? It's who you know. It's who you know. It's your background. It's your family name. Even in the UK here, it's well known. It's well documented that if you have to have a foreign name, like for example a Nigerian, and you're applying for a job, you could be discriminated against by your name and application forms. So what people tend to do is to change their names in order to enable them to navigate themselves around the system. So, we still have to know how to play the game. That rules of engagement is really powerful.
all right, now let's try to understand how do we really play that game. For you, how was it easy for you to understand the game?
That's a really great question. Come back right down to my grandmother and, being brought up in a community. Without internet, I say to people, technology is great. But what I've learned, before technology, and I think that I was quite blessed not to be brought up in a time with technology and to be able to understand and navigate myself around two different systems now. And so I got something to compare it to. So, for example, brought up in a very small community enables me to be observant and know how to get results through people and to navigate myself around people. And the other thing was around trust. When you think there was no telephones or, electric, yet everybody knew what was happening. Word of mouth was really powerful in terms of the communication. And so now we've got all this social media, and you can't trust what you've been told because of so much media news and things that you don't know which is true or which isn't. But when you come from a place where, information is passed by storytelling, socialization is done through storytelling. And to me, that's why the culture of storytelling is so powerful, because that's how you actually manage to pass information down in that sense. And when you look at how technology now supposed to make life easier, I think it's a lot more complicated because there's a breakdown in community and people don't communicate effectively as they used to, or even communicate from a place of trust. You don't know what is true or what is false.
What is true and what is false? And before you also say something relating to what you know. I want to stay here for a short while because it's very important now. Because most of the people in our demography are immigrant, no, people that are coming from other parts of the world to Europe because they want a better life for themselves. And sometimes they suffer a lot because they don't understand. We don't understand easily how the society is configured. We just come in here because we want to probably make money. Then before you can make money, you need to get this. Before you get that, you need to get this. Before you get that, you need to get that. In Italy, it's a very complicated situation. How you navigate, how to be moving from illegality to legality if in the case of maybe you come here without a regular visa. But for many Africans that want to leave Africa to survive in Europe, very many of them will never have access to visa. That is a way to call them out. But they, as human beings, they want to get to Europe. There is no way you can stop them. But the only way, the thing that the Europeans do is that you come here, the law is so entangled. In fact, you look like an animal that is trapped inside trap. So you have to move here. Sometimes many people don't survive before you eventually come to become legalized immigrant, as it were. So to this individual who have passed through a lot, how much does trust, what you know, play a role in you managing to understand the system?
That's a really great question. First and foremost, I say to people, you've got to understand that you get results through people. People, look at who you're associating yourself with. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. Who is who at all times, and make sure that you associate yourself. I mean, take you and myself, for example. We're having this conversation now because you reach out to me on LinkedIn. Know the resources around you and make sure, that you tap into those resources. You and I wouldn't be speaking now if it wasn't who you are, in that sense. And you asked to have an interview with me. So, things are accessible, but you got to be really strategic. It's something that you have to plan on a day-to-day basis and being clear. As a coach, you have to be clear. What is going to be your next step? What is going to be your next step? What is going to be your next step? Every day you wake up, that's the question you have to ask yourself. What is going to be my next step that's going to take me to my next level? And that is a process. People want the outcome, but it's not the outcome. It's the process. You have to understand what does it take to get from A to B. And, it might take you 5 years. It might take you 10 years. It's the strategy, and it works quicker. When I first started working for myself, I had a mentor, and that mentor told me something which sticks with me. There's 2 things you need to succeed in business, and I apply that to every aspect of my life. One of them is build relationships. Everything is about relationship, the relationships that you have. And the second one is your integrity around your word, your commitment. If you have an agreement with somebody, stick to it. Be your word, because without integrity, nothing works. And what some people tend to do is they make promises and they don't keep it. They give their word to something and they don't honor it. And if you're living your life like that, it's just not going to happen because people are just not going to trust you. If you have a mentor, you need to really look at how you operate as a person, how you show up. How you show up is how you get the results. You get the results according to how you show up, if that makes sense.
Right. Now, before we move into your business, your coaching, and how you help people, I want to ask you, because you are an immigrant, you were born in one place. At a point, you decided to move from there to where you are today. Just like me, I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. I decided that I wanted to come and explore Europe. I was on traffic here. It's not, nobody put a chain on my hands and brought me to this place. It was my decision. I'm an adult. I was already 24 years old when I did that. So I hold myself accountable if things doesn't go well the way I want it. So I've always knew that I'm going to be doing what I'm doing today. So I am very clear to myself. If it doesn't work, I'm going to hold myself accountable. And if it works, okay, then it means the strategy has worked. Of course, not everybody is like me. Not everybody is like you. But we do care that all of us should manage to achieve what we want in life and by extension also our journey here, immigration-wise or whatever, whichever way we want to look at it. All right, now, I want you to speak to somebody like you, like me, somewhere, who want to embark on this journey, who want to come maybe to the West, and probably who want to succeed. Of course, all of us want to succeed, though. So what do you want to say to this individual who want to embark on the journey?
Okay. I'll give you an example. As I said, you got to be clear. What is it you really want? 100%. What is it? And get that really clear. So if you want a job in a large corporations, or, you want to own your own business, you've got to be clear. And then the next thing you have to ask yourself, who are the people? Who are the people that I need to speak to tap into? I remember when I was at university and I was studying, my degree, mass communications. And I had a job cleaning, in the mornings because I needed money as a student. And so I was working for this large corporation in the city. And, I really put myself out there to make sure that I see these leaders, I have conversations with them, I ask questions and I become interested in them. And, the relationship build just by me having conversation. I might be in a cleaner, but I put myself in a position that, this is just temporary. It's not something which I'm permanent about. And I know that this is not everybody, but I was very clear that I wanted to learn. And this is why I said, it's a lifelong learning. What can you learn in this context? And so, I've had conversation. I'd go in and I see these leaders, and I never saw myself that they were better than me. I saw that I could learn from them, and I would ask questions and, build up the relationship as they go along. Then this individual, I got related to him, and we had a really great relationship in terms, I speak to him and I find out about things, and, I read books. And so I ask questions because, I have a plan, I have a strategy. And I would speak to him about certain things, and then he would respond. I'd see him on a Monday, I'd ask him, where did he go for the weekend? What did he do? And if he say like he went to horse racing or he went to boat racing, then I'd go and read about what was it like at the regatta? What does the regatta means, in that sense? And then I come back now really informed. And then I'd say, okay, so what was it like, and really build, find out what matters to that individual and read around it. And so in the end, I got a job, a part-time job based on that whole relationship, because I heard him having a conversation that he needed support. And then I said to him, I can do that. I can help you with this. How can I support you in that sense? And, because I had a relationship with him and find out that, yes, I'm very knowledgeable in terms of my conversation, and I show up like I'm not knowledgeable, he said, okay, I'll give you a chance, and so I got a part-time job working with him from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock. And the pay was very good in compared to me being a cleaner. So I moved from a cleaner to being his assistant in the evening to enable him to organize himself, because his problem was he was very disorganized and he wasn't being productive. And so I offered that I would help him to do his work and to help him to organize himself. And so for me, I moved from a cleaner to being his assistant. And I remained that way until I graduated from university. So I'm just using that as an example. You've got to invest. You've got to take the time out, and you have to know what is it that you want and spend time investing in understanding. So, it's like everything else, being of service to someone. If you're being of service to somebody like I did, as I said, I took the time out to find out what he was interested in, what he got up to at the weekends, and have conversation and show up like I knew what I was talking about, even though I knew nothing what the regatta was about. I've never been there, but I read around it. And so I was able to hold a conversation. And all people want to know in this world is that you care about them and you're interested in them.
Now, does the society you live in? I'm not looking at the general society as it were. I'm looking at the limited one. Say maybe, for example, you, a Jamaican woman, came from Jamaica, or a Jamaican young lady. So when you get to UK or you get to Germany or France, whatever it is in the West, there is a people that look like you there. So you are going to be in this circle in most of the, you are going to start from there. Even though in most of the cases we remain there, we never really leave that cycle, no? So that cycle, that people that look like you, that is what I mean by the society in this case. How much does that play in eventually helping you to find yourself in the society and, like you said before, come to understand what is the rule of the game so that you know what to do?
Okay, so we all got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And then you have to recognize your own values, because I think that plays a major role. So if you got 3 friends who are smokers and you are somebody that does not smoke, then you start to ask yourself the question, how long are you going to be with these individuals who are smoking? Have you got the courage? Because, it takes courage to actually say, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to move away from this and enable me to do that. So again, we start thinking, what is your values? Is it in alignment with your values? Because if you live in a life which is not in alignment, again, it comes right back down to what I said to you, integrity. And integrity is not about being moralistic. It's just about honoring who you say you are. So you say, I'm a person who, I don't smoke. Why would you want to be with people who smoke? Because that's not working for you.
All right. You started working in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Because now we are moving into business, because that is important for us as a community, as a people. And so I want to understand now, why did you choose to work for yourself as you are doing instead of maybe doing the work where somebody was paying you?
Okay. So take you back, for me, I recognizing that I wanted to work for myself. I was a single mother at 17. I had a daughter when I was 17. So I had to navigate the British system, work in corporate, work in all sorts of jobs in order to. But so I knew I was ambitious and I'm really aspirational. And I had a mother and a grandmother who taught me that ownership is power. My grandmother has never worked for anyone. And so, I knew that ownership, everything you do, my grandmother always say, you've got to own something, because you need to be able to sell something, no matter what. You have to have something to sell. And so from a very young age, she was what we'd call a higgler in Jamaica, which is somebody who buy and sell stuff. And so that's what I grew up on. She's never worked for anyone. And so I had that instilled in me from a child, that ownership is power. And so even though I work for organizations, and I say this to my clients, you never work for anyone. Somebody pay you at the end of the month, but reality, you work for yourself. The motivation comes from you. So you wake up in the morning and you decide what clothes you're going to wear, how you're going to show up, how you're going to be a leader, how you show up, how productive you're going to be. That's not about anyone else. It's your own motivation. And if you use that in every aspect of your life, then you're driven by yourself. You're not driven by anyone. You're driven by your own decision, your own choices. And your choice is where your power lies. So you choose to go to an organization or you choose to work for yourself. So for me, entrepreneurship is about being pushed by you, your own motivation. What is it that motivates you to actually do that? And it's no different to working for somebody else. I mean, that's my take on it. Because the same way how you're motivated to get up in the morning and go to work, it's the same way, that same motivation is what caused you to be successful in business. I've been in business for 22 years, and it's the same attitude, the same behavior, the same actions. When I'm working for somebody, I never ever gone into an organization believing that I'm actually working for anyone. I work for myself, if that makes sense to you.
It all usually tied up here in a cycle at the end of the day. That is why we start with you, where you are coming from. You see, your explanation before that I was asking you where you're coming from and the Jamaica growing up, you did make mention of entrepreneurship, that it is something that is very common then among the Jamaican people. And this, by extension, very all across Africa, entrepreneurship is the order of the day, because you don't have anybody to give you the job. Because if the job requires certain type of education and you are not being given this education, then it's obvious that you are cut off from that setup. But the society didn't cut you off. The society asks you, what do you know? What can you do? If you can do anything, then you can be paid for it. You set the price, you take the risk. If it is successful, you will be paid. If you fail, you are held accountable for it. That is basically what entrepreneur is, no? In that you are going to motivate yourself. Nobody is motivating you. If you choose that you are not going to work today, that is your own. You know whether you are going to survive it or not. So I want you to go a little deeper on this area. This idea of entrepreneurship within the African diaspora community.
I think we've always been hustlers. I think, we've always had to hustle. I mean, when you think of the Windrush generation who came here after the war to clean up Britain, basically, the reality of what happened is that, the discrimination in housing, jobs, and every aspect, even though they had money, the racism and the politics, they just couldn't find anywhere to live. So they had to become very entrepreneurial. So they find their own structures, they find their own system to thrive, which meaning that, they would throw what we call the partner system, which comes down again to trust. And so every week, somebody would throw some money together. And so that's how they were able to buy houses. And if you look at the aging population now around the pensioners, the Black pensioners, they've got many of them being able to buy 5-bedroom houses, 6-bedroom houses. And the generation now have become more affluent because of the older generation. They're dying out and leaving lots of money to their children. And so for me, we've always had to work 3-4 jobs, to enable us to strive. And even though we've always at the bottom of financial situation, we still manage to navigate the system and live very effectively. But it's a strategy. So I have a strategy. And, sometimes they would, share different beds, to enable them to, somebody would rent the bed in the morning and somebody else would work in the nights to enable them 3, 4, 5, 6 of them would be in one house, to make sure that they thrive. So just because you start there doesn't mean that you will end up there. But you have to have a strategy, as I said. You've got to be clear. So if you come in from any part of the world as an immigrant, you've got to be clear. What is it you go in there for? And being clear around that and not allow yourself to be distracted. It takes discipline and courage in order to thrive. I've known so many people and hear these stories, and that's why I like the stories of America, because you hear America is built upon immigrants, right? And they go to America, and yes, it is tough, but with a structure in place, you can make it, in that sense. And so is understanding what is it that you want and being clear around it and find the right people to associate yourself with. Because my mother always used to say, who you surround yourself with is very important. And that is a lesson for all of us.
Thank you. That is a highly valid lesson to keep at the back of our mind. All right. Now, there is this lady, this young man who realized that he or she want to move from be an employee to self-employed or start up his or her business. So how should they transit? Share with your experience. What do you recommend that you should do to transit from working for somebody or a company to be working for yourself, and you now owning a business?
Okay. So I always said to the people who, because we have the great resignation right now, and a lot of people are leaving corporates to start their own business. And, after being, not being able to work for 2 years, a lot of people decided that they don't want to go back into corporate, so they want to set up their own businesses. For me, what I said, you first most have to think about, you are the client. You have to see yourself as the client first and foremost. What is it you want? What you're providing? So it's like you're going to cook. You got to be clear, what's going to be on the menu. Is it what you're going to like? You make sure what did you actually consider. You're going to go into business. You got to consider, if this was you and you providing a service, would you be happy with it? So you've got to be clear around that. And the second one, you are the first client. So whatever you do, you're serving you first and foremost, right? The second thing is, the very same, when I left my job where I was working with young people, developing young future leaders, young people who come in out of the universities, like Oxford and Cambridge. I'd work with them to enable them to understand how to navigate themselves around the system. So, for example, interviews, how they dress, code of conduct, and enable them to do that. So that was my job, preparing them for the future of work and making them effective. And so I knew and I had relationships with schools and some of these universities. So I then reach out and say to them, this is what I'm planning to do, and because they knew me and know I had a relationship with them, that made life easier. My first contract came out of one of my clients that I used to work with. I told her what I wanted to do, and she said, yeah, we know you, we know what you're up to. So that's how I secured my first contract, working with 20 Black boys in a school. So if you're doing a transition, again, you've got to look at your relationships. It makes life easier when you reach out to people who already know you, know what you're up to, and know how you deliver. And that starts from you, because of the relationship you had and how you operate and how you function, people will relate to you in that sense. And then you create possibilities with them. And then you know where the opportunities are to enable you to become effective.
All right, now let's look at the community in a game. You will see that a lot of people, a staggering lot of people, don't ever start something of their own. Now, why do you think that is the case? I mean, talking also from experience, have you had people who maybe could have done something or didn't make the move, or maybe some have talked to you why they never make the move?
One of the biggest one is fear of failure. What if it doesn't work? What if I do this? And people just don't want to fail. So what they do is stay in jobs that they hate, because yes, psychologically, you'll get paid at the end of the month, whether whatever you're working, so you'll get paid. And it's interesting that people just get tied up to that paycheck, because whether we like it, yes or no, that's the way the society is structured. They set you up to work, to be a worker. And so the mentality is, get a job, get a good education, get a job, and make sure you go out there and work for somebody else. Not very many people say to you, listen, you're going to be somebody that work for yourself in that sense. So that mentality around tied to a paycheck, it's very challenging for many people. I remember when I first started, people would say to me, so who's going to pay you at the end of the month? I said, I pay myself. They just couldn't get their head around it. So who's going to pay you? What do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, I determine who and how I get paid. I determine the hours I work. I determine how much I put into it, because it's all about self-motivation.
All right, this self-motivation, because one thing is to start business, no? Another thing is to remain in business. It's not very easy. That is why a lot of people don't remain on it. Some do try, but they find out that it is not easy. It is true, it is not easy. So what do you think make people to remain in business? What make you to remain in business?
I love the buzz. I love the edge. I love the idea that I control me. I determine what and where I go. And that enables me to be, even times when I don't have anything, when I'm looking at the bank account and there's no money there, the aspiration is any minute now, somebody's going to call me. Any minute now, I'm going to get a contract. Any minute now, something is going to happen, So I'm never really in a space of thinking it's not going to happen. Yes, you know, I might go to friends and families and say, listen, I need some shopping, you know, I need some money or something. And, you know, they might give me enough to cover petrol or enough to feed myself because they know that I'm committed. You come back right down to that trust. And people believe in you because you believe in yourself and they see how much you push yourself. You know, I mean, I'm forever learning, I'm forever educating myself, always going to conferences, always going to seminars, always widening my network to make sure that I'm not in a little bubble, you know. And so when things are challenging, I can make a phone call and I can have a conversation with somebody and say, you know what, this is what actually going on for me. And because those people know that I'm a committed individual, you know, they would say to me, well, have you considered this? Have you considered that? You know, you need an advisory group. You need people who's going to be there for you when times are hard. And, you know, I will sit and I'll have a coffee with a friend. I might not have any money in my pocket, but the sheer fact that I had somebody to have a conversation with inspire me to get back on the job and do what I need to do.
I understand that you support high-profile Africa, Caribbean, and entrepreneurs in your business. Could you tell me exactly what you do with these people?
Okay, so come back down to what I said earlier, right? What is it? Because it can be really hard, you know, working in corporate. You're not getting promoted. And, you know, we've got entrepreneurs who are very enterprising in organizations themselves, you know, and so you're not just there to do a job, you're there to make a difference. And I think employers, what they're looking for is somebody who's going to make their life easier. And the bottom line, as the Americans say, bring in the profit and make a huge impact. So I really help them to understand you've got an idea, how you're going to turn that into reality, and how you're going to make an impact with that, and how you're going to maximize your productivity. You know, I see so many of us in organization, and we have no idea to understand how what we do make a difference and the impact it have on the bottom line. You know, so we go in, we have a job, we just keep up in this, you know, a face focus and not really thinking about what is it I actually do here. I have a job, and what is it I do that makes a difference? So we don't know the whole of the structures. And then I say to my clients, you have to understand systems. Systems mean that you understand how every part of the business works. You have to understand the finance, the marketing, you know, the accounts. You need to know every aspect. And, you know, there is 4 components in a business and you have to know it. What's the product? You know, what is the product? What's the product? How do you sell it? How do you market it? And, you know, the whole operations of it. So you have to understand those 4 fundamental key of a business: products, marketing, sales, and operations. You have to understand that. So you play a role in any one of those that cause the business to function. At any one time, if the product is not working 100%, you need to understand what do you need to do to bring your product that makes them relevant. How do you market it? How do you sell it? And, you know, making sure that all your systems, especially now with data protection, you know, you have to understand all of those, because if you don't, one bit will work and one bit won't work. And then it turned out to be like a car that's driving 3 wheels. You know, your car has got to function on 4 wheels. And that applies to your business as well. Doesn't matter what business you work in, you've got to understand the components, the systems, and the structures, and understand. So what I really do is give my clients the opportunity to understand systems. What's the systems you're working in? The next one, you have to know your craft. You know, you have to know your skills. You have to know your talents, because there's some things that you're good at and some things that you're not good at in that sense. You know, you have to really understand how you influence other people to take action. You know, people will work with you and they will support you, but you have to know how you influence them. And the other thing is you have to take time out to reflect and understand what worked last quarter, what worked the quarter previously. You know, you have to understand. So a business is not just, okay, I'm going to make money. You have to understand the process. Process is everything.
For most people who have already started, now we have left behind those who do not want to start business. We are looking at those who have started business now and they're having some challenges and they need success, they need to succeed in business. We have also left those who have given up, but we are hanging on with those who have decided to hang on with their business but are having challenges. Let's try to diagnose a little bit of a part of it. What do you think is the most biggest challenges for people who are just starting out in business? They are not giving up, they are strongly on, and but it's not moving, it's not going where they're supposed to go. What do you think are some of the main challenges that people like that are having?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is, you know, you have to look at your systems. Systems is important. So, for example, time management system, you know, how you managing your time. So I coach my clients that you must not have more than five things that you do each day, and understand what those five things are going to be, you know. So it could be, for example, that you're going to make 6 phone calls. So you make the decision that you'll have a conversation, you'll have 5 conversations a day, you know, and that's it. So that's 25 conversations you have a week. Within those 25 conversations, one of them might convert into a business as well as it might not, you know. So sometimes you make these phone calls having conversations because, you know, your business only based on the conversations that you have, nothing else, you know, conversation. Yes, I know there are people who says, okay, on LinkedIn and all social media, I can get you 1,000 leads, or I can get you all these clients and everything else. But the bottom line is it still boils down to having a conversation. You have to have a conversation, you know. And I believe a business is built on having conversation. It's people that makes the business go around in that sense. And one of the most scariest things for many individuals is having a conversation. You know, it's not easy to pick the phone up and ask for a business. It's not easy to say, this is who I am, this is what I can offer, and especially with the market as it is these days. You know, people are not trustworthy. They don't trust people to say that they're going to deliver. So there's a lot of things. One of the biggest things is rejection. People don't pick the phone up and have the conversation because they feel rejected. I reach out to people on LinkedIn. I like their profile. I like what they do. You know, they come to me and, you know, I make requests. And sometimes it's not necessarily about anything. I just wanted to say, you know, I see your profile. I love what you do. You know, great to connect with you. I look forward to learning more about you on this platform. That's it, you know. And somewhere in there, the person might say, okay, let's jump on a call. Let's have a conversation around something. So it's never about selling. It's about connecting with people and have conversation with people before you do anything else. You know, just get connected to people. People is the one who's got the money, so don't be frightened of them.
It is true, because say you set up a business, you are the creator of the business, you are the consumer. That is not a business. If you are a business, you are going to have to deal with people. There is no two ways about it. You must do that. And I also like the fact that you lay emphasis on people throughout this conversation, on relationship, on trust. And I think these are the fundamentals in doing business. In fact, I think you also wrote somewhere that one hand cannot clap.
Yeah, that's the name of my business, you know. When I decided to start the business, and you asked me a question earlier on, which is quite powerful. If you're going to give your company or your business a name, make it be something that motivates you. You know, something that means something to you. You know, don't just pick a name, red bag or blue bag or something, without understanding the value of it. One Hand Can't Clap for me is a very powerful name, and it means a lot. You know, partnership, collaboration. It's impossible to do anything, you know, big by yourself. You need community, you need people. And so for me, I love the concept of, it's a proverb I grew up on. One hand can't clap, meaning it takes a village. It takes a group of people to create anything great. And the concept of my business is never about me. I told people that it's never about me. It's about the people who are served, and understand what that actually means. That I serve you, and I'm here to make a difference to you. When your life works, then my life works. All people want to do is to feel good about themselves, and they will give you anything that you want. This is what I say to people: learn to be a service, and your business will always function.
All right. Talking of business, I want to tell you that we really appreciate your time, the time that you spend here to respond to our questions. All right. At this point, we usually tell our audience, our guests to advertise themselves. So in these few seconds, share with people what you have in offer. How can they connect with you? What do you do? Please go ahead.
Okay. So I have a product which is 52 flashcards called Things Mama Used to Say. Things Mama Used to Say are proverbs that I collected over the years listening to my grandmother. When I was working in schools with young Black boys, I realized that they didn't get connected to their culture. They didn't understand the power of words. And proverbs to me is a way of wisdom. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. And if you use those values and practice them and implement them, then you will be really amazing the results. And so these things Mama used to say, it's the value of what I use in my business. And I think everyone should have a box to enable you to understand what your values are and what you're driven by. When I went to Nigeria, to speak at a conference, I talk about the importance of culture, the importance of values. And, values and cultures is the most important things in any business. As a business owner, for you to make the money you want, you have to understand the values that you have as a business owner. People will work with you because of your values, and you stand by your values. So that's one of my products. Coaching for me is enabling people, whatever ideas that you got, help you to really bring that to reality. Because there's so many different components in developing an idea, and it's ideas. Everything in life started off with an idea. Facebook, Instagram, they all started off with an idea, and somebody push it and make them become a reality. So that's it for me in terms of the passion, and I said my coaching is really that. And recently, I decided that, we work extremely hard. We have a culture of working hard. I want to transform that. As business leaders, we have a space where we can come and relax and really look at. So I got this retreat. I bought this place in Jamaica, which is a retreat that enables us as African Caribbean people from the diaspora, where we can come, be with like-minded people, look at our vision, look at our culture, look at who we are, and really seep ourselves into that whole thing around entrepreneurship, culture, and heritage. It's in our blood. Entrepreneurship is there, and we just have to develop it and make sure it happens. Don't be tied to a paycheck. The way forward, you've got to really understand the power of ownership.
I don't remember if you tell people where they can find you. I don't know if you said that.
Okay, so my website, www.onehandcantclap.co.uk. One hand can't clap. One hand can't clap for me, it's everything. It's impossible. When you think of one hand can't clap, you got 10 fingers, and just imagine that. That's about the support and the resources. Everything that you need to strive is out there. Somebody's got whatever it is that you want.
That's perfect. All right. Now, for people that are starting out, for people who want to start, what would you recommend for them as maybe 2 or 3 strategies they need to adopt so they can survive? Of course, this is because you have been in business for a long time.
First and foremost, I would say, if you're going to start, I know that a lot of people probably want to think of this. You've got to have a mission. You've got to have a mission. What is this business about? And you have to be clear about it. What is it? So first and foremost, you need a plan, you need a mission, and you have to be clear what your product is. What is it exactly you're selling? What's the problem, basically? Because a business is solving a problem, and really work that 100% all the way. So my mission is collective responsibility. Everyone understand that, collective responsibility is everything. Because when you have the resources and you have the support, you wake up every day lit up by your life. Why most people struggle is because they don't have support, or they believe they don't have support. For me, if I'm struggling, I pick the phone up and I call someone. And for me, that resource is whether it's money, whether it's advice. This is what I said earlier on. There's three things that you need. You need a mentor, you need a coach, and you need a sponsor. And I'm going to define those three, right? So a mentor is somebody who's gone on before you, somebody who's done it, somebody know all the pitfalls. They make your life easier. Tap into them, and go to your mentor with questions. Make sure every month I have a question for my mentor. What does it take in order to, I really did my prep, and I make sure if there's an area that I'm not clear about, I ask my mentor, what was it like? How did you do this? How did you make that decision? What was it like in that sense? And so that for me is the lived experience. Tap into other people's lived experience. The second one is a coach. A coach is somebody that really keep you focused. Focus on what is it that you say you want. Focus on what you say matters to you. So it's about money. What is it that you're going to be offering to get that money? And some people, it's that increasing their prices. What is it like, for some people, they've got money issues, or they're not accustomed to asking for money. So me as a coach, I would coach you in the context of keeping your focus to say, yeah, I want to increase my pay. I want to increase my goods. I want to increase this by 10%. What is it going to do? And at first, it's going to be challenging, but you just put yourself out there. So for me, that's a coach. A coach, keep you focused. Focus, focus, focus. The third one is a sponsor. And a sponsor is somebody who knows where all the opportunities are, that enables you to know. They speak on your behalf when you're not there. They have conversations about you when you're not there. Most times, you get what you get because somebody advocates on your behalf. That's how society is structured. We live in a class society, and 9 times out of 10, people do not like you personally coming to them and asking for anything. All it takes is somebody to say, okay, well, yes, that person. And once that person says this, because of the relationship, so basically, they are leveraging their relationships to enable you to be successful. That is what a sponsor does.
Is there any other thing you would like to add to the conversation to conclude today's episode? Maybe a message or anything you wanted to say I didn't ask you, because it will really be very rich here. Please go.
I just, passionate in every aspect around entrepreneurship. And anyone out there that's listening, I would say, always think like an entrepreneur. Ownership is the way forward. And I really appreciate you for what you're doing, because the way the world is, entrepreneurship is the way forward. No matter what job you have, no matter what position that you're out there doing, you could lose that job tomorrow. But if you've got that entrepreneurship and that mindset of an entrepreneur, doesn't matter what, you could lose everything you have tomorrow or today, but you will start again because of that mindset, and that is it. Develop the mindset of an entrepreneur. Even if you don't start a business, always think of the skills that you have. How can you monetize it? Because if you make redundant, if you lose that job, always remember, you can solve a problem. Any one of us can solve a problem. And believe you can solve a problem, because that's what you get paid for.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening and talk to you in the next episode.